And I'm actually, yeah, there. Let's do, yeah, let's just do this. Let's go to, I'm going to start with the PDF file and just walk you through what we have here on the PDF. This you may already have, but if you don't have it, cool. If you do have it, I'm sorry. We'll get through it. Everybody have R installed on their computer? Does everybody? I assumed you had, but if you don't, there's how to get it. I wanted to point out a couple other things in this. If you use R a lot and your life is impacted by it, there is this open source R package or installation manager called Rig, and what it will do is it runs on the command line. So if you pull up a terminal window, if you type rig, it will list all the versions of R that are in your system. And why I say this is because if you update R, I think we had this conversation, don't ever update R. But if you do update R, because eventually you may have to, R doesn't uninstall itself. And so if you're like me or like other people that I know, you end up with like 4 or 5, depending on how many times you've updated it, you have 4 or 5 installations for it. This will list all that are available on your machine, and then you can type and have it tell you basically add a new version. You can remove versions, and they even have this is not working well, but it's trying to. The library in R is specific to the installation package in R. So meaning when you go and download R packages, it sets up a library based on the R version. So the library name usually has the R version. So I'm using R 4.5.2, and somewhere in my R setup, in fact, I can find it in just a moment here. Maybe. Of course, not on your screen.
I haven't seen it in white and so long. Black. Actually, it's yes, we all basically do the windshield.
Interesting. So basically, this is where my R is installing all my packages on version 4.5. So if you install a new version of R, it usually points to a different library. And one of the things that Rig is trying to do, although again it's experimental, is allow you to point to the same library with a new version of R. That's again more complex, and there's a few layers to it because to actually change the library path, you can do it temporarily or you can do it more permanently. Most people want it permanent, but the fix for permanent is a little bit harder. So questions on that? Any thoughts on that? Again, this sounds like our trivia hour, but it's you know.
I downloaded R a couple years back for my first stats course.
Mm-hmm.
Is there ever a way to check which version I'm running to make sure it's the most up to date?
Absolutely. When you start R or R Studio, it will tell you at the top the R version. And so if it runs, it's likely that most of the packages that we'll use in this class will work fine for you. It may run into a catch, like I have a week on measurement models. You may have run into a catch where the measurement model itself is like there's a package we use for measurement models called Lavon, and it sometimes relies upon packages that do take an R 4.5. So when you get into that spot, I'm happy to help walk you through how to fix it so you don't have to reinstall R. But if you just want to reinstall R, or if you wanted to try out Rig to install it for you, you could go ahead and do so. So thank you. Other questions or thoughts? Anyone ever seen Rig before? So I'm at least teaching something new. So that's my goal in this. Today is like hands-on R. And because I get a sense, at least in the again, I'm new here, so I don't know all of you well, but the biggest barrier to learning how to do this work is R often. Part of why I want to, thank you, Atuna. The R code is r.version.string. Right there as that command r.version.string is an environmental variable, it appears, that has it. I didn't actually know that. Thanks. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's not like an operating system where, if you don't install the new one, somebody's going to hack your computer and take all your files. It's just A few other features. The biggest problem in this is that if a person develops a package based on this current version of R, the older versions may not install it, depending on how they've developed it. You have to specify in your package file like which version of R or greater, and if you don't, it defaults to the current version. And so that may be, if you end up trying to install a package, that may be the problem. Again, if you run into package installation problems, please ask questions. Colin. Mhm. I love this question. I really appreciate the chance to try to answer it for you. And I felt the same way. So R is, I have a love-hate relationship with it. I think everybody does. Why the command line is just its interface to send commands to the system to run it. Generally speaking, what we're going to end up doing is running R files as a script. Now, what the script does in syntax allows us to have something that's replicatable. So if you think about some of your point and click interfaces like jump or SPSS, a lot of times you can get drill in. Now, again, I don't use either of those. So they may have fixed things, but you may drill in and pick an option and you run your analysis, and then you come back a little bit later and you forgot to drill in, hit that analysis, try to rerun your analysis, and the numbers have changed. The goal for syntax, what we are trying to do is build a syntax-based set of analyses for replicability and repeatability, right? So to rerun the analysis, or if somebody else wants to double check your code, there's a big push for open science. So a lot of times in open science papers and manuscripts, there are journals will have something called badges. I don't know if you've seen those before, but basically, and then depending on which journal, you may have to submit your syntax for that to be reviewed, and that itself will be an R file or another file. Does that help answer your question, Colin? Yes. In the initial phase of R, most people, at least in this class, the way I'm trying to design it is to give you an example set of code where you have to make minimal changes to run an analysis like that to get you started. There is a very big learning curve to R. But if you get into it, then it does become very much more like a programming language. So getting packages off of GitHub. So for instance, if most of the time, if you want to install a package, there's a function called install.packages that allows you to install a package from this repository of packages that ours uses, something called CRAN. But then there actually is another version of this function to download directly from people's GitHub. So if you wanted to use this experimental package or use this brand new method that hasn't even been pushed to CRAN, you can grab it as well. I think the hard part, to me, my goal is to get you a basic introduction and how to use this to get your numbers. So for my expectations for the class is that we'll just work through it. And actually, that's a big reason why I'm trying to flip the class, because the R lift is harder, I think, than the statistics lift. And so if we can turn lecture hours into working together through syntax as an example, working on homework together to try to work through this, that is my goal for you. But the R universe is really, it ranges from people who have never coded before to people who are full-time developers that with skills that are beyond what any of my comprehension. But I hope that helps. Does that help? That's great. Yeah, the hard part, so it's tough. I mean, if you're used to point and click things, I remember the first time it was SAS actually. When I first started graduate school, I was used to SPSS, or back in the 90s, it was in MyStat. And I remember getting to Illinois and they're like, we're using SAS. And so you pull up a window and there's nothing, right? Whereas in SPSS, there's your data, right? There's everything else. What our studio, this development environment will do is when you end up having data, you'll have a better chance of visualizing it. And so This is supposed to sort of bridge the pure coding aspect of it. I mean, we can run R from a terminal. This is just a terminal window. And if I type R here, I can actually run R directly from a blinking cursor terminal window. Nobody, I don't think, does that unless they absolutely have to because of some weird setup of a computing system. So my goal again is to get you to at least introduced to it. I know I'm associate editor for a very applied journal, the European Journal of Psychological Assessment. It's where people post psychometric instrument reports, and they require code. They require syntax. Like when you submit a journal article, you have to do that. And depending on where you may submit journal articles to, that may happen. And actually, I'm guest editing an issue of multivariate behavioral. No, excuse me. What is that? Oh my goodness. Behavior research methods. Names escape me. And so my students are submitting manuscripts with us. We have 2 guest editors for this, and they don't even. One of them didn't submit their syntax, and they didn't even make it through the triage process. They had got sent back. No, you need to meet these guidelines to be able to submit papers and manuscripts. It's literally to try to have people be able to see your analyses, to replicate with your data, to replicate it and get the same numbers. Or in the future, if they wanted to replicate your study with a different sample, to see your methodology purely to see how it goes. And it's really hard to do that in a point and click environment or something that doesn't have at least some syntax for it. But that being said, it is painful, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But that's my only hope, is that I can at least communicate well enough with you and to be your partner in trying to figure out how to start with it. Okay? Hope that helps. Okay, great question though. I'm glad that you asked that. And please, more questions like that though. Okay. So RStudio, does everybody have RStudio as well? Great. Do you know that there are things called RStudio servers? Have you ever heard of those before?
Nope.
So an RStudio server is something where you can go online and use RStudio. I'm going to just log in, deposit real quick. And basically everything that you have on your machine will have up in the cloud. Here, just be a second. So now you'll see my stuff here. Hey, look, there's our course website. This is a package I was working on, but as it loads, what you're going to end up seeing, once it loads, it's RStudio. It's just through a web browser. So if you're interested in sharing development, if you're interested in, it's taking a very long time. Let me do this.
Can you work with others on that?
Yes, actually.
Because that's one issue with R, is that it's isolated to your computer.
That's exactly right. So where my old university had a notebook site where we literally had, we could log in. Let me see if I can still do this.
Okay. Why does every university do it?
It's terrible. Yeah, nope, I can't log in right now. But anyway, here's RStudio. There it is. So it's up in the cloud. So you can use this if you're like me, I love using like if I travel, I have an iPad with me. Can't put R on your iPad? Well, that's okay. You can connect to an RStudio server.
So with the other person, like if we're working together, Virginia and I
Yeah.
project, and I am typing live into this, will she see that live?
Probably not. It's not that advanced.
How advanced? Google Docs?
It's not Google Docs. It's not Google Docs. No. But if you have,
I could stop, say, hey, I finished, and then she can start.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, and you
same thing to like retrieve your computer back and forth, that type of stuff.
Absolutely. And so anything that you have up here, you can download and put on your computer as well. It's literally stored on a server somewhere else. So if you have, depending on the type of server, you may not want to put personally identifiable information. If you've got certain information you can't put up there. But most RStudio servers, if you pay for the service, it will work that way. At Clemson, we do have the ability to do this. The Palmetto clusters. Yeah, the Palmetto cluster. Let me RCC. So the high performance computer here, the problem is, there it is. If I go down here to, no, hang on here. Where'd it go? Actually, let me do this. I saved the link, but it's in my work tab. See, I'm learning as we're going here. That's not a dashboard. There it is. I will as soon as I learn this, of course, I'll share it with each of you. What's that?
So I saw you on the dashboard and I was like,
Yeah, but this is basically what happens when you go on there on the server. You will get you can ask for so the Palmetto cluster allows for free accounts for faculty and students. What that provides you is a chance to, once you log in here, you have an interactive app. You can do our studio server, and then you kind of put a few. You have to set up an account, and you have to create a type. I call this psychometric read. I was just testing it out. Like, this is October as I just started here. You hit launch, and it takes a moment to get started, and it's live for about 12 hours. You have to relaunch every 12 hours, which is a little annoying, but at least it uses it. I say that because it just takes a second, and then once it is created, you click that button, and everything you put there will always be there. So and this the HPC here, that is safe for HIPAA and FERPA, personally identifiable data, as well too. So that is a place where you can do it. And yeah, of course, it's not going to work live too. Anyway, so point I'm trying to make is you can get to R in different ways. In fact, so much so, it's odd. The experience at Iowa, where we had this notebooks site where we could just log in and it was right there, was such that the students didn't even know they could install it on their computers. They were all running it virtually in the cloud. So it is one of the nice things about R Studio is you can access it from many different places in many different ways. It may or may not be useful to you for that way, though. So, but for us, I think just having it on your laptop should be sufficient. If you are interested in learning about any of that, shoot me an email. I'm happy to work with you to get it set up. We'll forget that for right now. But yes, there are other apps here too. Look at that. I haven't gotten there. VS Code, Visual Studio Code is what that's called. That is something I'll show you a little bit later in this as well. My goal in this class is not to overwhelm this right here, is to show you the options in R, because depending on how you grow to use it, it really becomes flexible, right? If you're just using it for a one-off task, I don't think any of this matters for you. Just use it on your computer. But if you're using it in collaboration, if you're using it I mean, the nice thing about the RStudio server for me is that, if our students are working on something, it's easy to log in and find a share, like directory on a share somewhere that works. But it's not going to work.
I looked into this one for my dissertation because if I went in one direction, the computing power of my computer wasn't going to be possible.
Exactly. Yeah.
So my committee was like, look into this as an option in case I went that direction to see if I could.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. So let's talk a little bit. How much do you all know about computer architecture? I'm not.
Nothing.
Okay. So
You told me this. I did not know either.
so there's two parts.
Panic I just had.
Oh, sorry. Well, you don't need to know it, but let me. Oh, there we go. Finally, there we go. We hit that connect button, and it will look like RStudio. But there are two parts to computer architecture that you have to be mindful of when you're computing. One is the processor. That's the things that crunches the numbers, the zeros and ones that go through it. And the other is the memory of the device, the physical memory. RAM is what we used to call it, right? What happens in R is that when it stores data, it does not save it to your disk, it saves it to the memory of your device. So your laptop, the amount of RAM on it is the limiting factor of how much data you can get into R. Without it, it will give you an out-of-memory error, which is what you might have had to do. Each one of your machines will always be able to process on R. It may go a little bit slower depending on if you've got an older processor. And R, generally speaking, runs on, so each of our processors these days actually it's a chip, but there's actually 4 or 5 different processors in it. They're called cores, right? If you want R to work fast, really fast, you need to activate it to work on multiple of the cores, but its default is to one core. So what I'm trying to say is you don't get a lot of speed increase for just using R off the shelf with a faster computer with lots of cores. But what you do get, what you commonly do run into, and you have neuroimaging data, I think you said, you have a hard time storing all that on a disk. So that's actually why I bought this laptop, is because I had 128 gigabytes of RAM on this thing, because at 16, which was the laptop that they kind of default to, at least when I was buying this, wouldn't work. A question in the chat: how do I point to a directory on a local machine using the R server? Unfortunately, you can't. The only thing you can do is upload files to it. If you're on Palmetto, Palmetto has a file system. I'm not familiar with what it is, but the file system is something where you can then. I'm using Mac. Windows has a little bit different way of doing this. Why am I not getting Finder up? Let's go here. In Mac, you can actually connect to a server. On the server, you can connect to Palmetto and then upload your files, and it looks like your local file directory. That's the closest you can do, but it's sort of a shared directory system to be able to do that. Hope that helps. The other thing you can do, again, if you go into industry and you want to do some data science in industry, oftentimes they'll have database systems to access, and R does have the ability to do that. So your connection here, you may have a database of some sort. You have to install a bit for it, but then once it's installed, it's a matter of then pointing toward the address of the database to do it. But that's the closest it gets to Tuno for how that works. I hope that answers your question. Okay, again, just these are not things to, like, if you just put this on the shelf in your brain somewhere and be like, how do I do whatever? Oh, there was a file somewhere that said there's a server. You can come back to it. For me, for our purposes in class, having it on your local machine works just fine. Okay? Other questions on this before I keep going? Cool. Glad I could show you that, though. Yeah. That's I think for most of what you do, it will just a regular machine that has about 16 gigabytes of memory and a processor within the last 5 years should be fine. If you get into things that involve, I'm going to talk about Bayesian statistics a little bit later on. There's a lot of numbers created with those, so they take a lot more memory. But for the bulk of my career, I got by with 16 gigabytes, and I think that's a fairly standard. Like when you buy a laptop from, it's probably not the lowest end laptop, but it's somewhere just a little above it for it. But for most of what you do now, if you're like one of our students with functional magnetic resonance imaging data, you've got 3D voxels of like what happens in a brain scan. You're going to need a lot more hard drive space to store the data, but then all that data on the hard drive, again, hard drive is like, we used to call it physical storage. It goes into virtual memory to try to get used in R. All of that's going to take a lot more memory. So if you have a lot of numbers to crunch, it's big. Now, I think you mentioned before you trained MMA fighters. And are you using anything that would be like, force jump plates, or was it some of the stuff that tracks like force movement, or any of the like the technical stuff that collects a lot of data on position, strength, force, momentum, anything like that in your research? Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Got it. I will add one other thing for you though. If you get to a spot where your machine isn't quite working, if you're still a student here and you can get onto the Palmetto cluster, that's where you can put more memory. So using an RStudio server, you can still, like, this doesn't tax my machine, it's taxing the server, like the cluster. So my machine works the same regardless of how much data I give it. So I would say most likely just a regular standard basic, I wouldn't say super basic, not super low end, but just a step above the low end laptop should probably get you through. And if it stops doing that, then moving your stuff to an RStudio server would probably keep you continuing to be able to make progress. Great question. Yes.
Where does the memory get stored? Because between all my R code and my dissertation, I keep getting a pop that's like, your memory is close or whatever. So where's
Yes.
it stored that I can like clean it out or find out what's
Okay.
going out, or is it the multiple versions of R?
So no. So the memory, you get this message in R itself?
No, in my computer.
In your computer. Okay, so that is the hard drive.
Yep.
Okay, the hard drive. So if the computer overruns the RAM, it actually writes to the hard drive and temporary files. The hard drive itself is a lot harder to figure out where that is. What I would recommend you look up is, now you're using a Mac. There are, I don't know that, well, there are some built-in things in R. I'll just say this in Mac. I'll just real quick. There are ways that you can figure out where most of like which folders have the most, and there's some terminal stuff that you can. I'd be happy to, if you tell me later or send me an email, I'd be happy to point you in the right direction on that.
I'm sure it's the R that's doing it.
Well, it could be, but the thing is, the system is also putting things there as well too, and depending on what other programs you have there, Mac makes kind of hides a lot of stuff in temporary or system folders that you don't see, and depending again on what program is, how it's written, and who put it there, it's sort of it can take a lot. So yeah, great question. If you get now, why I asked, is it on your computer or is it R? Because if you're running out of memory in R, it will be a red warning like you just had an error in the R window. So that's a different, the red warning in the R window means you need more RAM on your computer. And that would be when, if you're getting that on your computer, that's another reason to shift the RStudio server. All right. Other questions? These are great. Yeah. Sorry. This is a bit of the R rabbit hole, but I think every one of you said they've used R a little bit, or if you haven't used R a little bit, this is probably overkill if you haven't used R yet, but I'm just trying to give you the heads up with it. All right. Shall I keep going? All right. By the way, we will take break tonight at I started a little bit late because the snafu with the owl. How about 5:55 for the first break, and then we take another break at 6:50 or so, something like that. 10-minute break each, something along those lines, just to give you know what to expect. Okay. Next, the GitHub Copilot. I mentioned this. I kind of showed you this last time. I really this is something that would not be eligible for you tonight, but if you sign up for it tonight, by next week it should be working. First, you need a GitHub account. I give you a link there, and then you have to tell it you're a student. And Microsoft owns GitHub, so they really they make this free to all of us. If you're not using this through Microsoft, or using it as a student, you have to pay quite a bit of money for it. I highly recommend putting this there. I think Dr. Brown mentioned we had a conversation about using AI. She's like, first learn it and then you can use AI for it. I agree, but I think I'm gambling that this will help all of us get through class. And I will teach you how to use it and integrate it as we go forward. And my one catch with that, yes, I want you to defend what you're doing. You have to defend it to your dissertation committee or your master's committee, and you will have to defend it in articles that you publish or any research that you do. So when you use Copilot to help you code, sometimes it will suggest code that you've never seen before, like a function in R that you've never seen before. Then I'll show you how to look up and get help for that function. That's what I'm hoping to get across with it. But I strongly encourage you to set that up tonight. I believe, so I sent this to Lisa. She's going to use this in her class. And she signed up. She went to there and she had to take it. You have to send a screenshot of your Clemson ID to Microsoft to make it verified. Once you do, it lasts for like 3 or 4 years. Yeah?
If you're an employee.
That works too. You can be an employee.
Because I was like, if it's going to show employee versus student, that's where I got worried.
No, I'm faculty. I'm employee. Okay. Yep.
The link that is in that document takes you to the school application where you have to go through Clemson and you are a representative of Clemson to sign it.
That's not good.
So you have to go through once you create your account, you go to your personal settings to do the education.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I will make a note to fix that in the handout. Thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. My bad. And the funny thing about it is I signed up for this, I think at KU when I worked there. That was over 7 years ago. And only just like 2 years, like within the last year, they say, hey, could you reauthorize your credentials? And then I was at Iowa. So once you do this, it lasts a very long time. And to me, it's really changed the way I code. Now, If you used AI a lot, you know there's slop that comes out, and it will. The determining factor in R to me is how clear your comments are. If you comment your code, say, I'm going to do this next, it will give you much better help. Otherwise, it'll suggest things that are just completely off base because it doesn't know what you're doing. And even if it did know what you're doing, it's a machine. It's trying to predict your next couple of characters.
Do repeated. We're gonna like loops, and I'm like, I don't want to loop.
Exactly.
I don't want to loop.
Yes.
Stop the loops.
Yeah, that's it. It gets a little funky sometimes, but for what we do in class, I think it'll work really well because again, I'm going to give you a survey of methodology, like kind of a, I wouldn't say a deep understanding of it, but sort of what it is, how it works, and where to go for better resources. And I think it will work well for that part there too. So I highly recommend. Then I showed this last week, but I'll put it on here again. Once you do have your GitHub authorized, you can go under the Tools menu, under Global Options, and then find the Copilot link. At the top, you'll have a place where you can sign in. The other thing I will note is what happens is it completes code automatically. So if I say, import a file named jonathan.csv. So it will go and it'll be like, here, actually, from downloads. So now it's actually giving me, there it goes. Right. So it'll take a bit of time to pop up and populate that hint. Right. And then of course later on it'll be like, here, let's do my data equals this. Then what you can say is just, so it's going to help you display the first few rows of data. So it's popping up suggestions as it goes along. How fast you want those suggestions you can govern. And I will tell you, it drives me nuts sometimes if it's too fast, right? So I set this to be about 700 milliseconds. If it's driving you nuts because it's suggesting things and getting in the way of you typing, like you have to hit tab, for instance, to activate the suggestion. Well, if you wanted to move it, indent your code by a tab, guess what's going to happen? It's going to not do that. It's going to put the command it's suggesting in there. Slow it down, right? Or if it's too slow, speed it up. But that's the other part to it. After that, I think everything else is pretty standard. The defaults work pretty well. Indexing your project files. If you use an RStudio project, I don't know that we'll even get into that. In our class, we probably won't. But if you do, and you have a bunch of multiple files in it, it will also index those, which means what it's doing is it's reading how you've coded the names of variables and so forth, and it will pull those into its suggestions, which is really, really useful. It's not just, try this function or something like that. It's actually giving you suggestions within the context of how you wrote the code, the syntax. Questions on GitHub Copilot? All right. Going back, maybe over here. Okay, that is the beginning. I thought now would be a good time to give a live demo of R in class, just to go through a syntax file. Again, I'll run in the break in about, I think I said 5:55, so about 10 minutes from now, we'll take a little break, come back to it. So I'll give you the demo of R, I'll give you the demo of RStudio, and then I have a few alternatives later on. Now, those alternatives, if we don't get to them, you can just find them in reference. I expect, if you want to use RStudio for the rest of class on your local machine, do it. It's fine. Those other ones are modern ways of looking at R that have tried to make certain things easier. And the emphasis on tried. There's nothing that's easy, all right? There's a learning curve here that is sometimes insurmountable. But let's go into R real quick. I don't want to save that. And actually, I'm just going to close RStudio. What I'm going to do is I have a file that's called Make Friends with R right there. O2 Make Friends with R. In my Mac, I've had to, if you're using a Mac to do this, I double clicked on it, but sometimes if you double click on it, it opens up a window that looks like this. And if you'll permit me to be the old man I am, back in my day, this is all we ever had before RStudio came around in 2012, 2013. Like when I started coding in R, that was it. That was our window. You don't want that window. That's the R console. That comes built in with R when you put it in there. If you're using a Mac, you can right-click the file, go to Get Info. Of course, it puts it on my other desktop. Come on, Mac.
Did you do open with?
Yep, you go to the Open With, select RStudio, and then hit that Change All button. That will make it work the best. So RStudio will open up. I think by default on Windows, it installs it to open the R files, but I may be wrong about that. And honestly, it's been a while. But if you've, I see the typo and I can't unsee it. The if you have a problem with it, let me know. I can help you troubleshoot to open it up directly in RStudio. So this is RStudio, and what you get in RStudio is a series of windows. And your RStudio may not look like mine because I've changed the position of those windows, and it depends on which machine I'm on, how big my screen is, and what I use more frequently. If you want to change the location of the windows, right here, these are the panes, window panes that we can do. So I have the console, that is where the R commands get submitted. You don't have to copy and paste them in. You submit them through just a keyboard shortcut from the syntax. But that console is where you see the output. So that's a very important window. The syntax is also where you see the output. So this is funny. When I teach, I like to have the console up on the right here with my syntax on the left because that's where I spend most of my time. So that I like to set it up like this right here. So you have your syntax window here. These are your syntax files. Our syntax files are plain text files, meaning if you are using a text editor, if you're using like in Windows, I think Notepad, you can write an R file in, it'll open an R file. If you're using, anyway, Markdown, whatever, it's all there. The bottom right window has your files that are in the folder, the current folder that you have. So this is another part of R that we're going to get to in just a bit. Where does R think you are on your computer? I'll try to simplify that as much as possible. That is in the syntax as we go forward. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But this is also the place, so if you plot anything, you'll see that. Packages is a little bit yet less useful. This tells you which packages are currently installed and what version they are on your machine. I really think R, that has help, but I think it should be in quotes. If anybody's ever used R help before, you'll realize it's not really all that helpful.
It's the technical manual. It's very much.
Not even. You should
scroll down to the examples, and then maybe it'll have an example that you're actually trying to get to.
You should see, like on the package development side, how hard it was to write these files. So thankfully, the people who created RStudio have made it a little bit easier to do that. But I don't know what the viewer. Oh, the viewer is if you actually have in R there's other files called R Markdown or Quarto, which is a Markdown system. Basically, you can take R and build documents around it. In fact, that this PDF that you see here actually came from this Markdown file, QMD file, right here. That is my Make Friends with R. It looks like this as a background. And if I want to see what it looks like but keep it in R, I hit the command here, Command Shift K, and that's what Viewer has. It just shows the document. And then there are other ways of making actual embedded presentations in R, slideshows. And so there were times I taught semesters where I'd have my slides up in that window and then R in the other window so you wouldn't have to flip back and forth. Now, I'm sorry you're not so lucky. My slides are all in PowerPoint this semester. But point is, I'm trying to teach you what is in each place and what it's used for. How are we doing so far? Questions? Oh, Sarah says, yes, please.
I was just saying, we use Markdown a lot in the data science course. The QMD, how's that different from Markdown?
Great. So R Markdown is the sort of original R version. And QMD is sort of backwards compatible with R Markdown. So if you're only used to R's version of flavor of Markdown, I should back up. Let me define Markdown for everybody. Markdown is a simplified language of writing documents. For instance, my note-taking system in my life is on a system called Obsidian. Hey, look, there's my homepage. And in Obsidian, I can I can make comments like this. Basically, I can create quick code that does things like a quote, or like I can make a quick list, and it makes teach class or something like that, right? So Markdown is a quick text file system. It's the sort of the counter to markup. What like HTML, hypertext markup language, is sort of very heavy code base to give you nice looking documents. Markdown is very light code to give you nice looking documents. That's what Markdown is. R Markdown is a method that gives you the ability to embed R directly in the document itself. So for instance, if you're writing a report and you want to talk about your data, if I run this default file here, I'll just save it for the moment. What it will do is it will then take the R output and embed it in the document as well. So that's R Markdown. Michael, I know you probably, is this what you're familiar with, the R Markdown version itself? Okay, and this was the data science class. This was Dr. Brown's class, the R class. Got it.
Yeah.
That's what we call it.
Got it. Quarto, yeah, Quarto is the next sort of iteration of it. R Markdown only works in R. Quarto works in it can work with Python. It can work with any other software as well too. It's sort of the broader version of it, and it's more updated, but they work mostly the same. So if you're familiar with R Markdown, Quarto, you can take your R Markdown, change the ending of it, and it'll work like Quarto. Yep, just like the chunk. And yes, it's the chunk style for it. Now, when you're in class, Markdown works great. When you're writing reports and homework, Markdown works great. But when you're trying to just develop code, it's hard because running the chunks is not as effective. So I always just work with because you have to find the chunk, you have to run the chunk. Sometimes, so what a chunk is this little 3 tick marks of information. I've already passed the break. Give me 2 more minutes and I'll stop for break. The way R works is it sort of works sequentially through your file. So if you didn't happen to run all the chunks at the top of the document and you run something down below, it's not going to know where it is. Plus, rendering the file is not actually running the file. So if I were referring to something above and I didn't run it, there's a lot of problems with it. So I find Markdown to be difficult in interacting, but it's difficult in everything else. And I do have one more comment here. I'm sorry, I just saw this. The R file on Canvas. Uh-oh. All right, Sarah, I'll help you in break or shortly thereafter to try to get that troubleshot. So
I always found it easier to do my R code and then just move it into
that's it. That's it. I completely agree with Christy, Dr. Brown, on this because she, and honestly, like when I've worked with students on their like dissertation work, if they bring me Markdown, it takes me a lot longer to get through it because of that process. It's like, oh, I forgot to run that chunk. Well, I don't want to run all the chunks. That might take a while. Right? So anyway, at that point, let's take a 10-minute break. Come back about, let's just say 10 past the hour, and we'll resume the R fun, okay? As we get back, any questions for what I've covered so far as we're going through this? Okay, great. So again, just kind of wrapping up what the R in Studio window is doing here. The other part that I haven't talked about is the environment. The environment is where you see your data. And it comes, right now it's empty because I haven't actually entered anything in. One of the things we're going to learn pretty quickly in R is there's many different types of data. And this is where R splits the boundary between a programming language and a data, just pure data like SPSS would have, right? You wouldn't have this as much in SPSS or something like that unless you got into the syntax files for it. So I will get to that in just a bit, but the R environment is here. If you forget which commands you ran and the console is empty or you can't find it up in the console, there's your history. If you've got a database, you can go there and there's the Learn R package that has tutorials. I almost started linking to that, but you can install the package and you can run tutorials on R as well too. I will note my strategy for this class, again, is to sort of give you, this is the high-level overview, and then each week we are going to have that hands-on example. And I think since I was able to record this week, I'm a week ahead right now. So if I can stay a week ahead, we'll be able to do this, right? So there we go. One other small caveat I forgot to mention about next week is that I mentioned, I think last week, there is a chance that I am required to go to some meeting with donors. So
We love.
so
We have good food.
and actually,
Win-win.
I will say I believe next Friday I have a meeting with other donors and then a luncheon with provost and something like that too. So
Also, welcome to the big leagues. Yeah, in no time before they said you're gonna help us with Bob Jones.
actually he's at that meeting. So, but well, I will say this. Why I'm saying that is, as you can understand, me starting, I got a name professorship. I had one at Iowa, so I'm a little bit used to this type of experience. But I'm saying that my time's not fully my own. I don't think, and so I think what's another reason why I prepared the class. So if I'm again meeting with the dean tomorrow. I will have more information for you about whether we'll have the class live, right here at this time next week. Tomorrow afternoon, I will send out a note on Canvas to let you know what to expect. If we don't have this class live, I will readjust our schedule to try to fit it in. I should also note the other thing I forgot to mention as we started is I did tweak the schedule a little bit. Last time you had requested perhaps adding longitudinal to the list of topics, and then we had a request for meta-analysis. Now I have good news and bad news. Meta-analysis I have no talent in. And Colin, I think you had asked that. But what I can do is I can give you a set of resources to go to and try to study them on your own, and I will try to put those together for you for it. But turns out I live with a longitudinal expert, so I can provide a longitudinal class, and I figured out a place to put that, and I have to go to the simple syllabus for right now to find it. But we will figure this out. And of course, as I'm looking at the simple syllabus, I swear, like moving has caused my brain. I'm just going to blame it on moving. Little do you know, you probably didn't know me ahead of time. I'm absent-minded everywhere. I had the wrong dates in here. Now I have two April 9th now. That's lovely. Anyway, so I reconfigured our schedule. I did put multi-level and longitudinal models here. I will note there is Dr. Brown had just gotten courses approved to have a multi-level course. So next academic year, at some point, we haven't set our schedule yet, but I believe multi-level will be offered. I'm going to guarantee it's Lisa Hoffman teaching that class. She also brought in a structural equation modeling class. That would be this thing right here. And that will be offered sometime in the next academic year as well, too. But maybe these classes will tell you why or why not you may want to take them. So hope that works. And well, this one's possible. This is definitely asynchronous now. Actually, everything is definitely asynchronous now. My goal is to give this a video to watch ahead of time, a little bit of a quiz, a 4 or 5 question quiz that's probably multiple choice on the video just to sort of hit the high points of it, a reading, and then we come in and we're coding at some point. We're doing R, okay? And then hopefully that structure is just like Dr. Brown's class. You said you had about an hour in class or so. I will be here as long as you want to be here. I'll try to structure it for about an hour of content, but if you want to go longer, or if some of you want to go longer, it's my job. I'll be here, and I'm grateful to have it, and grateful to work here and to work with you. So, okay. All right, back to R. I borrowed the title "Make Friends" from Lisa. Let's go into the R syntax now itself. So this syntax file in R. And again, you probably, if you've had R before, you may have seen this. I'm not assuming it. The other thing I want to note is there's different flavors, ways of talking about R. This is also introducing how I talk about R. The biggest distinction is this. You may have heard of something called the tidyverse. And the tidyverse is fine. Now, I don't use it. Well, check that. I don't.
Piping.
Piping. So interesting. Piping is terrible programming practice, right? No. Here's why, right? In R, the pipe command does not let you name the argument.
That is fair.
And you don't know. And so if you're looking at someone else's code and you're not familiar with the function, the name of the argument is your clue. Not only that, what if you wanted to pipe the second one or the third one? So here's where pipe came from. Believe it or not, R actually has a built-in pipe already. But it was because back in the day, this is all you got. This console over here is all you had for it. So if you wanted to take an output from one command and send it to another, that's why pipe existed. Pipe itself is an abomination. Sorry, I'm just saying that. Now, you may feel differently, and you may use pipe, and I'm okay with that. What's that? Yeah, well, no, I will. I am not going to stop you from using the pipe, but you will not see a single pipe in any of my code. So that's it. Now, that being said, tidyverse is not just a pipe, it's a bunch of functions, and there are useful functions in tidyverse. So my goal in getting you to do this is code that this is built off of two things. One, me working with R for a long time. I used R in 1999. I kid you not, right? So I've been using it a long time. I think I said that last time. I'm going to keep repeating myself. But second, in those years, I've not just used it for myself, but I've also advised students on using R almost exclusively, at least for the last 15 years. And when you try to explain code to people, naming arguments is critical. Like, what is going into a function and why is it going there? I think that's the key thing. So pipe to me is like, I hate pipe, but we all have different preferences. I believe I'm in the minority, but I'm going to be stubborn about that. And I'm not wrong. Anyway, sorry. So long time ago, Lisa Hoffman used to teach a class called Make Friends with Sass. And since we were teaching the same students, I just adapted that to Make Friends with R. So I'm giving her credit. So the R syntax, the hashtag or pound symbol right there indicates a comment. And multi-line comments in R, they don't exist. But in RStudio, you may know if you highlight a set of comments and you hit Command-Shift-C, you can easily enter or remove multi-line comments. Once again, that's Command or Control, Shift, and C. What's that?
So I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, so you can, so if you have big chunks of code that you don't want to run, you can just comment out both with a simple command like that. Okay. The green is in RStudio, well, in this basic color font. Your color may be different, but it does color up the comments a little bit differently. Yep, there it is. There it is. The
See, I couldn't do that. I need.
And the nice thing about RStudio is when you're typing, now we have GitHub Copilot. So GitHub Copilot suggesting the tab command will complete GitHub Copilot suggestions, or if you're typing yourself and you already have objects, let's just say I create an object here. Let's say my data equals R norm 1,000. Let's say I have 1,000 pieces there. If I wanted to use R norm and I start typing it, actually my data, I can hit tab and it completes all of it. Right, so the tab complete is a great quick text completion. The other thing I will note is R is case sensitive, meaning capital letters matter. So capital R and lowercase r are two different things, right? Okay, so far so good. In R, pretty much every statement that has a parenthesis is a function. So for instance, the print function takes a number or takes something and prints it to the screen. You're like, why would I do that? Well, sometimes if you're writing loops or you're doing things that otherwise you need to see what's happening iteratively, that's where the print comes from. If you want, so that the terms that are inside the function, you will refer to those as arguments. I don't know why they're called arguments. It sounds like you're having a petty battle with R. And believe me, I've had plenty. But that argument is X. And that, again, is when you get into R, if you look at the help function here, the name of the argument matters, right? So in some languages like Stata, you can, actually in R2, you can put in commands. Here, let's do the command for a linear model. This is regression. You can put commands in order right here. But for your sake and mine, and for coming back to your code, I really highly recommend you put the name of the argument in the function itself. The reason to do that is you can map it onto what it is into the help window, but you can also then get a sense for how it's working, right? And without that name of the argument, it's kind of difficult, number one, for anyone to see your code, that you're like, well, I'm going to use my code. Well, your future self will thank you for putting named arguments. I promise you on that, right? So name your arguments is really good coding convention. Okay. So that's print. If you want help, you can quickly put a question mark in front of a command, and you'll get the help window to pop up for it. If you want to search help, actually, it's 2 question marks, right? So you can do double question, like for instance, LM, and it will pop up all the things that have LM in it to find help. I will note again, going back to help is not helpful, right? And my goal is to try to help you disentangle what help is. That's a lot of help there. That's what the next set of syntax is. Once you understand a little bit more of the structure of R, the help starts to become semi-helpful, but not entirely. And then, of course, there is no uniform guidance. I mean, there's uniform guidance. If you're going to publish your package to R's CRAN server, like where we do install packages, you have to make help a certain way. But a lot of times you don't take code from there. You get it from GitHub or where else, and that's the Wild West. There's no rules. You may not have help in any of the functions, right? It's all there. So for what we'll do in this class, there will be help. Every one of the functions will be there, of course, unless I wrote it myself. So each function, though, returns an object. So R is object-based. Now, if you're into coding, you may have heard something called object-oriented coding before. Object-oriented coding talks about the types of data are stored. The types have different properties, right? So a numeric type will have floating point numbers, right? Character will have character values, right? And R is not fully object-oriented because there's a few other catches. There's like if you think of, we may have an object named square, right? And we may say a square has an area, right? Well, not all. So now we have an object named rectangle, or better yet, so a rectangle is a type of square. So it'll inherit the area function from square, but without the requirement that all sides are equal. So that's something we call object inheritance. R has a little bit of that, but it doesn't have something called polymorphism. It's not full object-oriented code. If you're into coding, that you'll know what that means. But each thing in object, each variable, each piece of data in R is an object. So my data there, the way that you can tell what an object is the class statement. So if I ask it, what is my data? It says it's numeric, right? Numeric is a type of object in R. Why I mention that to you is 90% of your first errors in R will be taking the wrong type of object and giving it to a function. So if I created, let's see here. So now let's imagine I call this my data, and I'll call it C for character. And I'd say as dot. All right, so now I have my data, and my data C is a character, right? So if you try to do math things to a character, it's not going to go well, right? So if you do sum my data C, it will say invalid type character of argument, right? This type of error shows up frequently in early R because it's like a square peg in a round hole, right? You need a certain type of data for it to work. And generally speaking, if you are in help, like if I type LM for help again, it will tell you the class of objects. So here, for instance, the first argument to the LM function is something called formula, and it says an object of class formula. So formula is a very specific type of object in R. In fact, you can click on formula and find it. And again, it's not very helpful, but the formula here, what this actually helps you with is if you have an interesting research design. So we talked about analysis of variance last week. If we had a randomized experiment and we were randomly assigning people into 2 different conditions, each with 2 levels, like a 2x2 factorial ANOVA, that would just be the default way that LM runs. But sometimes we might have nested factors. Sometimes we might have, we may not need all the interactions and so forth. That's what this object describes. How are we doing so far? Okay. So again, the class statement, when you're new to R, class helps a lot. Or when you're getting errors, check the type. The type errors are very common in R. The other fun thing about R, why it is a little bit difficult, is that there's very few requirements. Anybody can make a type of data. Anybody. So that means if you're working on something and you have a function that works with the same type of data all the time, repetitively, you can name it a type and give it properties and so forth. And your type will work in R. It's just it won't work for some of the things in R, right? So take a look at type as you go forward.
Is the class the same thing if you were to do like glimpse data set? It's the second column.
I don't know what glimpse is, actually.
Glimpse tells you that it takes all of the first row of data and then turns it into.
Oh, it's a tidyverse.
Yeah.
Ah.
But the second column is numeric character, numeric character, numeric character, so I can quickly look and see if it matches.
That might be it.
A column of class.
That might be the case.
Okay.
That might be the case. Yeah, no, so tidyverse is a way of shortcutting it. If you wanted to see, like if you're talking about all the columns and data.
Yeah, I want to see this, but I see it this way, so I can copy it out or look at it.
Yeah, so there are other ways of getting that. But glimpse, certainly, I didn't know that works faster. Yeah. So great. So basically, tidyverse is a shortcut to a lot of the things in base, what we call base R, to do. Like how I used to do that is the apply function. So I would take apply, give it a data frame, tell it go across the columns and apply the class function.
Okay.
And it would then spit out for each one of them variable 1 class, variable 2 class. So those of us who coded in R from the beginning were like, what's so wrong? Anyway, one thing I will also note, I'm getting to it. There we go. So other questions on this? No questions. Okay. Anybody bored to tears?
No, it's helpful to get behind the scenes what it is, because I did tidyverse and other things, I don't necessarily know some of this.
And that's the hard part, right? Because teaching R is a barrier. And Hadley Wickham, who created tidyverse, who actually built our studio or was involved in building our studio, works at Posit, there's been huge debates in the scientific community of whether this is a good thing or bad thing. So tidyverse, if you can use R at all, that's great. The question is, at what level does it stop working for you? Or at what point do you not get core R skills that are more malleable than just if tidy's there? And the other thing I disagree with is there is no one type of tidy data. Like he's like, oh, tidy data has to look like this, like this. I'm like, come on, man. Like it's not, anyway, data is, but yes, that I realize I've been working in this field for now 20 some odd years. That's easy for me to say. When you're entry level, when you're just starting, good to have a framework to structure around. So see, I'm telling you, love, hate with tidyverse, but you won't see pipe for me. Just keep saying that. If you really want to mess with me, you'll just bring in you'll just wear pipe on a shirt. You'll bring like my name is, and you put the pipe character on it. That would
just one.
It's like if you just think of license plates. If you could get a license plate that had pipe, people would be doing that. Never mind. All right. So R objects. So everything in R is an object, right? So now our objects show up in this environment, right? And environments in R are very interesting as well too. This is called the global environment. Anyone ever talk to you about environments, R environments? So there's a concept in computer science called the scope of a variable. Does the variable exist for everything? Does the variable exist in a small little function or a set, right? Global environment, if you see that is where you want it to be. But as you build functions, as you build other types of things, the environment will also shift, right? So if you call a function like print, inside R, there's code. And in that code for print, it has its own miniature environment. And in that environment only exists what you gave it. So X is only in there. Now, in most coding, why I'm mentioning all this about environments is in most coding languages, if your variable is not in the scope of the environment, so the scope is how much can see it. For instance, global environment, anything can see it. But once you switch over to the function of print and its environment, in most coding languages, if you didn't give it X and it's referring to it, it throws an error. R is different. If it's not in that environment, so once you call print, what R is doing is it's starting this little what's called a child environment, which is different from global, right? But since you called it from global, global is its parent. So if R doesn't find X in its child, it then searches its parent. So that means, why I say this, is there may be times in code where you have stored X somewhere in your global environment, but forgot to pass it to a function. But the function pulls it from the global environment, uses it without your permission. And that could be bad if you needed to pass one data set and it was referring to a different one. So just a little bit about environments. By the way, if this is interesting to you, Hadley Wickham does have a good book called Advanced R. It's not. It is very nice. It's like if you have it, once you have a little bit of R, if you read it, all of a sudden the errors that you see start to make sense. It's like, oh, or better yet, why is it running? This isn't my data. Oh, it's because it's pulling something from a different environment. So, but for most things that we do, global environment will be where we see our values, and those values show up here. Again, if we were to return from print an object, this object is now numeric. Each type of thing you return from a function is an object of a certain type. And each type will have different properties and different things that are attached to it. Okay? And we're going to see a few more as we go. You can see them here. By the way, if you want to see where your objects are, you can go straight to the environment and find it. You can also just enter the name of it. So I hit Command or Control Enter, and it sends it to the console, and you can see the value of it as well. Okay, cool. Great. So now there are literally thousands of types of objects. I mentioned you can create those, but we'll just be mostly working with something called data frames, and which I'll describe in just a little bit. Data frame, I'll just describe now, is like a regular box of data. Think of an Excel sheet, right? Or you see rows and columns of data. Usually and variables are sort of columns, and observations are rows. And each column can have a different type. So you can have numeric data, you can have character data, you can in the same frame. But again, we'll have more on that as we get further along. Okay, so the process of saving results from a function is called assignment. Have you ever heard that term before? And so what happens is, how you can tell, by the way, computer science from math. By the way, I remember taking my first computer science class as an undergrad, and they did this. In math, that doesn't make sense. That says 0 equals 1, right? X equals X plus 1, and we do some algebra, subtract X from both sides, 0 equals 1. That doesn't make sense, right? In computer science, though, it does, because what happens in the computer is it takes the right-hand side, it does the math, we call that, it evaluates the statement, and then it takes the result of it and assigns it to the variable on the left-hand side.
I didn't realize that's what that was called. I was like naming.
Yep, no.
I think it's the term I've heard.
So assignment is what we call the process of literally taking a value and assigning it to a variable name, right? So in this case, X equals X plus 1 doesn't make any sense mathematically, but to computer science, that is the key. And see, even GitHub says reassigning it, right? So assignment is what's that called. In R, you may see assignment more commonly with an arrow. Do you know why that is?
I don't know, but it bothers me that it's backwards.
It freaking drives me nuts. So excuse my language, but this is actually where, when I learned it in 1999, you didn't have an equals option. Turns out R is based on the language Lisp, and Lisp was built on a computer system that had an arrow key. And when you hit the arrow key, it would insert that for you.
Oh, that's funny.
So you don't have to use arrow for assignment. You can use equals in almost every case in R. There are just like, in these super advanced versions of R, there are like one place you can't use an arrow. It's where with something that's called non-standard evaluation. I don't know that you'll be there. Basically, if you need to not run a function until something in the middle of code and you've saved it as a character, it can't use an equal. It has to use an arrow. I doubt you'll see that in this class. You probably won't see it in your life. It's unless you start really get into R. If I do my job well enough and you love R, like so much you're going to get the R tattoo, maybe, but just come back with that. If you like arrow, use arrow. I think it's the Alt and Dash button, right? I don't even know where Alt is. So on my Mac, there it is. Oh, it's Option on Mac or Alt on Windows. Alt minus does the arrow as a shortcut. That's 2 keys. I like equals. Rate those of you who use R's. Do you like arrow or equals? Anybody?
I like the arrow. It's just I wish it was so very comfortable.
I hate the arrow.
Well, I would get the equals confused with like the print x equals to, like I distinguishes what is happening to me.
Yep. Okay, that's fine.
You know, like it's very clear.
You can also, so for instance, if I use equals and make my object, and I use arrow, my object too, it's the same.
Option.
The other thing you can do is this. You can use the arrow in the opposite direction if you want. And if you really want to make things, here, you want to break, you really want it broken? You can do that. And it does both at the same time. So if you really want to go crazy with R, you can do that. So I don't care. Yeah.
That's very true.
I don't care what you use. I use equal because it's literally 1 key, not 2. That's it. And if you think of how many times you use assignment, it's every line of code is assigning something. I'm like, I can get by with half the keystrokes that way. All right. Any questions so far? Okay. Another 10 minutes. We'll take our next break, if that sounds good. Sorry. Are you enjoying this? No, just kidding. Really? We can all hate R together. So if you used R, you know R runs on a set of packages. There's the base package, which is what I'm using here in R. But if we install a package, we use install packages. This installs a package from this location called CRAN, right? So it goes, and RStudio has its own version of CRAN. If you are not using RStudio, it may ask you for which server. Have you seen that before?
Don't not use Studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Studio or buttons.
Yeah. What you may see is this right here. You have to pick a mirror. Yeah, and like this is Iowa State. Anyway, what's that?
Do you just go to the package list?
That's fine. Once you've installed the package, actually what you need to do is, that's not good enough, library the package. That means it takes so install puts the package on your disk and make sure it runs. Library will then bring it into your current environment, right? And then that is where in packages right here, you'll be able to see if you wanted, where's Psych? You have a lot of, gosh, I have a lot of packages. Still looking for Psych here. There it is, right here. This right here will put library as well in RStudio, so you don't have to use command if you don't.
When I downloaded this file today, at the top of the thing, it says, do you want to download and
Yes.
So
Yeah, actually, and so RStudio now is sort of automatically suggesting the packages you don't have installed. It references your installed packages and not. Now, the installed packages are somewhere on your machine. If you get into an RStudio server or you're using a high-performance computing system, that's always a weird catch, because on your local machine, you have permission pretty much to write almost everywhere. Of course, if you're using a work machine, they may lock down certain directories. But on the high-performance computer, it's worse. So if you start to use R in an HPC environment, let me know. I can help you figure out how to set the package location right. So far, so good still? Okay. Next, if you want to bring in data, a lot of our data will be stored in CSV or comma delimited files. It's comma space values, comma separated value files, CSV. I haven't said that word in years. What I'm going to do is, I have an example file. I have heights data. For some reason, I'm obsessed with people's body measurements, heights and weights and stuff, because I remember that example last week. Here's a bunch of heights. You can see these are random digits. We have a really precise, scale or ruler at our house. That's some significant digits right there. The strings is factors argument is if R reads in a data frame or a piece of data where it's got characters, by default it makes it what's called a factor type of variable. Are you familiar with factors? Factors are coded variables, and actually, we're going to talk about those next week in the interactions class that we're going to talk about. Okay.
Is it an option to do read.excel?
Yes, and actually, yeah. So if you want Excel files, there's a package. The package I use is called Read Excel.
Could you get away from doing read Excel and just change the?
No, not that I'm aware of. It's read.csv is only CSV,
Okay.
but read Excel is the package I use to read Excel objects or package values. So and now one thing I'm going to say, I may have used R for many years. R is so big, I don't know all the functions. So you may know a better way of doing it. Like you just said, glimpse, no idea what that is. So you may say something, I'll be like, I haven't heard that before. So I'm just going to give you full disclosure. I don't know all the R functions. All right. So the hard part in working with R, though, is where is your data? And this is where I like RStudio, because RStudio, when you open the R file by double clicking and opening it up, RStudio defaults to setting the working directory, which is literally what is shown in this folder by default as it opens, to the location of your R syntax file. So what that means is if you put in the folder your syntax file, the one that ends in .r, your data file that you need to import, then you can not have to give it the path to the data file as you go places, right? It's right here. Now, get working directories is, they're difficult things, right? This is my working directory. If you want to know, if you're like, this makes no sense, it's in cloud store, I have no idea where that is on my machine. Cool, you're like the rest of us. If you want to see what's in the directory, the dir function tells you all the files in it, so that'll give you a hint as to what's there. Why I'm showing this to you is if you change, for instance, if I'm in RStudio and I'm like, oh, wait, these are all the classes I thought about teaching this year. If I'm like, oh, where was that file? It's in here. You see this here. The problem is when you change what you visualize in RStudio, it doesn't change the directory of it, right? So you might be seeing all these files here, but your R does not see those files. So you have to use getwd to figure out what R is seeing. And then those names of files will bring it over. If you want to change the working directory, you can use the setwd command. By the way, the tilde is the shortcut for your root folder on your system. So this will actually send me to a different place. And then where is that? It is users Jonathan Templin, which has all sorts of weird, odd files as well, too. My Mac system right here. And the other way to do this would be here under RStudio, under the More button. If you like what you're seeing here, you can set it as working directory. So click that, and you'll see it uses the setwd command. Or if you're off sync, if you went to look for files, and you don't remember where your working directory is, you can go to More and go to working directory, and it will send you back to it, right? So another problem with entry into R is syncing R with where your data happen to be. It's now this is where things get exacerbated when you're using RStudio, or here at Clemson we have a remote desktop. The apps, like where the files are on that system is usually very difficult to find as well. So if you're in that spot where it's like, I don't know where that file is, it's incredibly frustrating because that's like the start of your work. Let me know. I'm happy to help troubleshoot it. But let's go back to our classes working directory. So I'll go here and set it as working directory. Okay. Questions? All right. Now, again, this is actually the problem. If I change my working directory, you can see what's going to happen, right? I can't open the file. So the other alternative is maybe you don't want to change your working directory, but you want to give it the path of the file. You can always do that. If you're using a Mac, there's actually a shortcut command to do that. I don't know if you know this. If you secondary click on a file and you hold the control the option button, you can copy the path name of it for the copy. And that right there will copy the path name You bring it over into R, and it will, when you paste it, it pastes it with quotes. Now, in Windows, I don't know that that happens, but you can use the Windows Explorer or whatever it is where you can get the path name at the top of the folder. I think so. And there may be a shortcut to do that on Windows too now, but I'm not sure. But anyway, you just give it, what you end up having to do is give the path to the file prior to doing that, prior to the file itself. Okay. Everything okay so far? Questions? All right. Actually, I promised you a break right now. You want to take another break? Sound good? Another 10 minutes?
Sure.
So, I mean, did the breaks help break it up a little bit? Okay, let's take 10 minutes here. I'll come back and finish this file. Actually, got quite a bit here to go through. And then we will see where we get from here. All right? All right, see you in 10 minutes. Yeah. No, welcome back. Here we go again. All right, back to it. We're all joking, those of you on YouTube, that we're joking about the snow we may or may not have here and how big of a deal it is, while I was just showing video of the post-Thanksgiving snow that was 5 or 6 inches in Iowa. So fun times. That doesn't mean I'm a native Californian. I was mentioning to Tiffany beforehand that I never saw snow except for like literally one flake fall from the sky before I moved. So this is still too cold for me. Miami, here I come. Anyway, all right. Actually, no, I'm not moving ever again. Let's see here. Going through this, we were here in bringing in files and talking about different places you can do this. In the chat, it was noted that you can also go to, what was it, session, set working directory, choose working directory, right? So this is maybe not here, but it might be up here under file. No, anyway. But there's other ways of doing it. There's lots of other ways. All right, I had built this file when I worked with people who had lots of different data types. So there is an R package called the foreign package. It will allow you to bring in things like SPSS data. So this is SPSS. Am I in the right working directory? So yeah, I got an error already. Yeah, I'm not in the right working directory. That'll do it. So I just bred in an SPSS file. And this is set of four different time points, 4 DVs and 4 different ages, right? So it's like a longitudinal data file right here. Okay, questions? Anything? How about we do some merging? Anybody want to merge? Have you merged before in R?
I joined.
Join is tidyverse?
I don't know where it comes from, but I did say I've joined.
Oh, data table. Okay, so data table is another way. Merge is basically a join. Yeah, it's built off the database function left join and right join, like way back SQL code and so forth. But here we can give it a data frame. The Y data, let's imagine we want to put people's heights with their ages. Now, this might be height now. You'd like to probably have collected height over time if you're a doctor or something like that. We have our Y data, we have our heights data, X and Y. We may have an ID file in both, so you can tell it if it's named differently, you can give it by.x, by.y. You can just drop, if it's named the same, you could actually just use the word by itself. And then also there are other options. There's the all button, which means all the cases. So if they don't match, they are included. And where they're not matching, the not matching variables are now missing, the NA code. Or you can do all.x or all.y. The idea of this is sometimes when you merge data, you have a one-to-many, like you have an ID file and a person's name, but then you have a bunch of attributes about a person. So that would be like a one-to-many, or you have a one-to-one. In either case of that happens. Now, I will say if you're using merge, the thing I like to do to double check is also see the size of the data, right? So if I do the dim command y data, it says I have 10 rows and 10 columns. That was the original, that was X. And if I do dim of heights data, it's 10 columns or 10 rows and 2 columns. And then if I look at all data, I would expect that the merge went well to have 10 more rows. Now I just added that second non-ID variable to my Y data. I say that because merging and joining is where you drop cases accidentally or you bring in way too many cases. So to me, good practice is always checking the size and knowing which is which going ahead. I can't tell you the hours I've lost to merge or to merging data. The other thing you might want to do is transform data from wide to long. There are tidyverse functions for it. Reshape to reshape, meld.
Yeah, I've heard of that one, but I haven't used it.
So here, I actually created a function here called
Is the one pivot long?
pivot. Didn't know that
Pivot
one.
long. Okay.
So
Pivot long, pivot wide are the two. Yes.
I'm not going to go over this much. I don't know that we're going to come back to this a whole lot, but I'll just say, what's that?
It's really coming back.
There you go. I created a function to do this because I was dissatisfied with all the options. Like if you have multiple variables that you want to transform, but I'll just skip over this right now. Well, we can get to this when we need it in class. I don't know that you'll need it right now. And then finally, descriptive statistics, we'll do this in transform data. I like the psych package. I know the author, his name is Bill Revell. He's got to be close to 80 years old, or I don't know. He's been in the field a long time. He works at Northwestern. He's done some good work on the psych package. So if you want to see descriptives quickly, here you go. Is this what you're looking for, Virginia? Right. This is the describe function.
Yeah, except I guess you still then have to take out the column that you want.
Which if you want it, so
The start you don't really need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10.
well, if you don't like that, what you can do is pick which one you like. So it does have it as a variable name. So if you just want the maximum and the minimum, or better yet, if you only want a set of those variables, let's say,
Yes, I want that. Yes, that's what I want.
like, and thank you, GitHub Copilot, but you can name the variable. So this is a class of an object of a data frame, or it should be. It may be a matrix. There it is. Oh, no. See, it's multiple classes. It's a psych object. It's a p describe object, but at its core is a data frame. In a data frame, when you put brackets, you refer to the elements being either row or column. So if you say nothing before the comma, before the comma refers to which rows. If you leave it blank, it means all of them. And after the comma refers to which column. And this C function is a way, it's short for concatenate. It takes everything and just glues it into a character vector, all these names. And if these are the names in the data frame, it will just say them. But if, for instance, if I type it wrong, it will tell me, hey, wait a minute, that's not a variable. So there you go. That's what I was trying to say. You can also get descriptives for the long data. Oh, no, what happened there? I didn't transform my data. All right, never mind. Actually, I will transform my data just to make this last example work, because you may also want, this is transform data here. You may also want to transform or describe by a group. So in this case, I have 4 observations for a person. So my group will be the person ID. And when I do that, I get the following. So each person gets their descriptive statistics as well too. So I found Psych to be really good about that. I also like Psych for different versions of correlations, polychoric, tetrachoric, and so forth. So questions, comments? What are we doing? All right. So everybody votes for join. I don't know join. Base R.
Because you don't at the back what's going where. It's a left. You do all full join, left join, right join. Like the actual join function
Interesting.
determines the XY versus adding it at the back.
And that was, there we go. That was data table. No, maybe. Anyway.
Yeah, so you have to name it differently on the front. It's left join, right join.
Interesting. Well, I'll have to look into that. All right, cool.
And, with left join, I remember it preserves the ordering of the rows. Does merge keep the same structure as X?
Yes. So merge is actually doing a left to right join as well. So X is the left side, Y is the right side. Yep. Cool. Thank you. Well, maybe I could get better at joining. All right. Finally, transforming data. If you need to create a new variable, you like an all data long that is a data frame. So I can just put a $. Age C doesn't exist. So if I tried to do, whoops. Oh no, I didn't mean to do that. All right, all data long, there it is. If I just refer to age C right now, it doesn't exist. That's why you see null. That means it's not there. But if I want to take the age and center it by the mean of age, for instance, that's what, of course I didn't run that either. There it is. Then I can just take this and get a mean centered age for everybody. And then you can also do it in different ways as well too. You can also then create different significant digits for variables as well too. So if you need to.
Like mutate by.
Mutate by, yeah.
It's timers though.
Yeah, I know. Mutate is interesting because like there were parts of it where I was okay with it, but there are parts where I'm like, ooh, that's not doing what I intended to do. So but anyway, again, if you have ways that you can do this already, great. I'm just giving you some of the ways I do. You know, maybe I'm a dinosaur. That's fine. I can still get it done. And base R is not going to change. So all right. Any thoughts or questions on any of this as we go? Next, I have a couple other different options of R that you can try. That's what I was going to get into the end class today. Does that sound good?
I have one
Yeah.
helpful hint that
Yeah.
I discovered.
Please.
If you go up to line 209, the little
Yeah.
caret is a drop down menu.
That hides it. Yeah. If you want to get rid of your stuff.
File system, if you want to get rid of code. That one, once I figured that out, I was like,
Yeah. If you want to hide your code, this works. If you label it, you also get the chunks that you've labeled down here as well too. If you that's by labeling, I mean you put the name and you put equal signs or dashes afterwards, it'll put it there. So if you're like, what part of my code was that in? You can go figure that out. You also, but yes, this hides the code but does not.
it keeps the title so you can see it.
This little arrow, upside down caret arrow.
Make the caret go there.
So the way you do that is the following. It works on functions and it works on comments that are now because so like if you put a comment, my comment, and then you put a few dashes or a few dots or equals afterwards, then RStudio puts a caret there.
Okay.
Alternatively, if you put like a for loop.
Well, and like for my dissertation, it's over like 3,000 lines of code. Yeah. So I can like I have figured out different levels. So like this is my top category, and then these are all the guys under it. So I like depending on how you actually do the dashes. Yeah. You can like create a file system with my code. Okay.
Yeah. So here, this is the for loop. It'll also work on for loops as well. Yep. So and a lot of the coding development environments will do this. Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, for me it was just helpful. I'm like, I can no, I like that one still. I focus on visualizing. Yeah.
All right. Other thoughts, questions, comments, anyway, helpful tips, by the way, things that help you. That's great. I had built this file to teach people who hadn't had R at all before. You've had R. Most of you've had R. What I had done on here is like things I anticipate we'll see in the class. Like, for instance, we're going to get into centering next week and why it matters for interactions and moderation, right? So we're going to have that. Oh, there's how we center is by transforming a variable. But this is not exhaustive and not exclusive. And honestly, there are many ways, probably better ways than I'm doing it. It's great. You're not going to offend me if you suggest new things, okay? Oh, well, if you tell me the pipe, tell me the pipe. Pipe, that's right. I can tell you right now. You're just going to send me pipe emails. It'll just be in the subject line of it.
I think one I wrote for a project I did for Christy, I think was like almost 50 lines. I think it was like mutate. I mean, it was recode,
Yep.
rename.
Oh, here, let me. So I mentioned number one, the problem with it is the named arguments. Number two, what happens if the fourth element of that had an error? What would it say? How would you know?
Because it'll tell you where or you can find out how far it got before it breaks.
Yes, but it's still.
You can investigate.
Okay. I get it. All right. Do you want to see some other cool things? Okay, not cool. I don't know if it's cool for you, but turns out if you want to change now, if you're not in RStudio, actually, I should have done this backwards. There's a different R terminal. It's called Radian. Have anybody heard of that before? It's actually written in Python. Radian, when you're typing, will do things like x equals R norm. It will do things like color it, and then it'll try to, or x or new, I call it new x. Anyway, it basically drops hints. Like it'll try to make your console experience a lot easier. So Radian is a package a lot of people like to use in developing an art. The problem is I have not found, maybe other people know, I have not found how to put Radian into RStudio because Radian doesn't come from Hadley Wickham or Posit, right? It's open source and free, but if you'd like to install a different way of using it, it relies on the Python installer to do so. Another thing you might consider is not using RStudio. Now, I'm going to use RStudio for most of class. So let me just say that right now. If you're using RStudio and you're happy with it, great. There comes a point in time where it gets a little frustrating, particularly when you have multiple files open. So let's imagine I have this file, I have that file, and I want to switch between them and I can't see them. So RStudio is really, really fun. Let me, VS. So basically you can run R in Visual Studio Code. So if you're, I don't know if you've ever heard of Visual Studio Code. It's an open source code development environment from Microsoft. It's not open source, it's freeware. There is an open source version called Code Server that shows up on the Clemson HPC. But Visual Studio Code will allow you to develop in any language. So if you're using multiple languages, it's there, and it's package based. So you pull this up and you end up getting RStudio. Let me bring up Visual Studio Code for you here. This is Visual Studio Code. And is it going to bring up my last environment? Let me. No, it's a straight coding environment here. But let's open up a folder. Actually, I can do this. Open this in terminal. Code dot. So now there's all my R files right here. So here, so LaTeX is like a writing system. You can actually run LaTeX through here.
Okay.
So you can
That's why
basically,
that might be how I've seen it.
it runs on extensions. And so here, for instance, I have a bunch of R extensions, right? A Python extension, a GitHub extension. I have containers if you're ever developing. This is probably more for development or if you've got lots of files in your project. But here, if you get into R and you've installed the R pack, if you follow the instructions on my document or you see how to build it, you can build up an R file here. And the cool thing is if your R file is long, you can actually go and then split it. All right. Make it the same, that's the same R file on two sides. So here, let's say I really wanted this code at the bottom and I wanted to put it at the top. So now I have an environment where I can code and see multiple files at once, drag and drop, paste things. The other thing I can do here is so now this is Radian, the R Radian package down here in the terminal. And I can run R through this just like I would with, any other R system in RStudio. I hit Command and Enter, it takes the code, it puts it to the terminal. The thing it doesn't work as well with is with the environment. You have to sort of drill into the R itself to figure out where the global environment is. And even here, like displaying a data frame is a little like it doesn't pop up easily, but you can actually type like the view button and then it will pop the data up as well too. I mention this again because if you're using like Visual Studio Code is used like so in all the places, right? It is almost used like if you didn't just come up through R, if you're coming up through coding, I used Visual Studio way back in like early 2000s. Its original version, you used to pay for it way back when. It's just a wonderful like a development environment. It also integrates with GitHub Copilot. So when you have your GitHub account, you can actually connect through Copilot right here. And you can actually give it AI tools. So there's something called a modal context protocol server where you have a system that talks about how to interface between a language model and maybe your data. And it sort of floats in between. So why I'm saying this is depending on how deep you get into the rabbit hole you can. The other thing that's funny is if you have like your local machine, you can tunnel into your remote machine and use R on your local machine, like your home machine from this using GitHub, authenticating through GitHub. So it's kind of neat as well. Let's see, what else do I like with Visual Studio Code? Personally, I feel like the other thing I like with Copilot, let's say I call this my data 01 right here, right? And I call it like that. Then Copilot's like, wait a minute, you just changed it. Let's change these lines. You hit tab and it changes it. So it will go and find and replace the code that you're doing. So I will say, when I need to quickly do data analyses, just straight data analyses, RStudio is what I go to. If I find myself doing really complicated analyses or developing R packages or really doing multi-file systems, this is light years ahead of RStudio. So anybody use Visual Studio Code before? Now you don't have to. I'm just for your information. It may fit your needs. So it's so much so useful that now Posit has created their own version of it, Positron. Positron is like Visual Studio Code, but it's a little bit easier to get started, and it works only in R and Python, I believe. It may work in more. Actually, it probably does. You have to install it, but it comes off the box in R and Python, and it works a little bit better. And I would say that if you think about where things are going, I think I get a sense that things are headed more in the Visual Studio Code language world because it interfaces so much more with Python or with other bits and pieces. Have you ever heard the term vibe coding before? Anybody heard that? Vibe coding is where you don't know how to write something in a language, but you get ChatGPT to help you with it. People use that for vibe code. There's all sorts of stuff that show up that will go through this. So I'm mentioning this to you now. You don't have to use it. What I understand, I haven't even installed Positron. It's really new, but I did create a little table of things that I sort of figured out here about comparing each of these, right, on how to map everything together. But basically, the idea is RStudio is fairly confined just to R, right? Whereas the world that we're moving into with AI and everything else is much more multi-language. And Visual Studio Code itself or Positron give you extensions that allow you to map onto those systems. So ever heard of the program M Plus before? So M Plus, there is an M Plus extension here. Actually, Visual Studio Code is what I run M Plus in exclusively on a Mac. Oh, it's terrible. But if you go here to M Plus, you can install language M Plus right here. It's and it will highlight your code and it will submit your code to M Plus. So it's so much easier to run even just M Plus through R.
And it doesn't bog your computer down by having to install M Plus because you're
Well, you have to have M Plus already installed.
Got it. Okay.
So once M Plus is already installed, this will let you basically replace their interface for coding. And then, of course,
Are you gonna do that for SEM or are you gonna do that?
I don't usually. I just usually use. Nope, that's not what I want. I usually use Levon because it's open source. But
Oh, I didn't realize SEM could be done too.
yeah, let me. Just trying to find. What I'm trying to find is the M Plus file to show how this is. Like, nope, can't. Nope, I don't know that I have an M Plus file I can show you. I bet I do in just a moment, though. Give me a moment. Back in the day, I used to use M Plus more. Here we go. Of course, not there. Never mind. Oh, there it is. All right, let me open this in code. So here, for instance, I have an M Plus file. It's all coded up. Will Visual Studio? So Visual Studio Code will actually hint and help you with it as well too. It colors it, but then if you wanted to submit it, nope, it doesn't do that. Interesting. But there is. I've forgotten the keystroke command, but there is a hotkey that you do to submit the code, and it runs M Plus, and it is so much nicer for using M Plus in Visual Studio Code. M Plus is highly advanced, has a lot of models that a lot of other packages don't have, but it is like if you're not a student, it's close to $1,000, and I don't know. It also is not open source, so Okay. So I'm getting close to the end of where my material is. Do you want me to continue? I can go back to last week's class, talk about linear models, but actually I'm talking about linear models next week, and that'll be our in-class example. Should we just end here? Do you have questions? Anything you want to know? Anything else I can tell you about R and how we set it up? No. Sounds like you're very well prepared. Dr. Brown did a good job. The R class did. If you're still iffy about R, don't worry. I'm here to help. There's 6 of you. There's 1 of me. It's a good ratio, right? So
Thank goodness.
Yeah, and I assure each of you, I mentioned this before. I will not let you fail this class. So anything that you don't fully understand from this, nope, don't worry about it. We will get to it when it becomes much more relevant for the context that we're in. And I think then having a better context helps to learn this stuff as we go forward.
For homework, will it just be the R
Uh,
if we are doing?
no, I mean, what I tend to do, ask you to do is like fill out a Word file with the answers, but then you can submit your R code as well too. Um, let's see here. What you will find is I had taught this class with an online homework system, but that is such a laborious process on the back end that with 6 people, it's easy to hand code. But we'll see the first homework next week. It'll be here's a data problem. Here's a set of questions. If it goes well for next week, what I would expect, if I'm not meeting with whatever, then what we will do is I'll have a little of example from the syntax for the lecture that we'll talk about first, but then we'll just open up for homework and start working on homework. You can work on your own. You don't even have to be here, and then we can go from there. Okay. Also, so once again, next week, and again, I'll make this. There will be an announcement tomorrow of what's going on. Nope, it's anyway. There will be an assignment coming out tomorrow with what to do prior to next week. It's an ungraded assignment called pre-class work. It's coming out at noon because I didn't think it'd be nice after leaving here at 7 something at night to have an 8 a.m. email from me. So it's noon tomorrow. Um, watch this video, read the chapter, and then there's a lecture '03 quiz in Canvas that will be assigned tomorrow as well. Again, it's multiple attempts. This is not something to stump you. It is part of your grade, but it's
Until next Wednesday.
you have until
Weeks up to
you
class?
actually the quiz itself. You have until like you come to class. It is due at 4:59 p.m.
Okay.
Yep, and and again, I do this weighted average, so it's percentage out of 5, right out of 5. But if you didn't do well on it, then you just click a button and do it over again, right? You can submit multiple times. The problem with Canvas is it won't save your answers from one time to the next. At least I haven't figured out how to do it. If you know, let me
Oh,
know.
I do know.
You do?
You can see all the attempts that a student has made.
Oh, you can do that, but
You
I'm saying
can't see it.
I'm
I cannot see
yeah.
it.
The thing
You
that
will be able
the
to
thing
see
that I want Canvas to do is save the right answers.
it. Oh yeah. Well, I don't think I've ever taken a quiz that does that. It's always
That's
like,
the
go
so
back and try again.
So Lisa Hoffman built a homework system that does that. She built it with SAS. I replicated it with
So
R.
does Canvas. I think so. It does also get the right answer though after the fact. Yeah, but it doesn't keep 1, 3, and 5. You have to remember 1, 3, and 5. Right.
And that is the thing that drives me nuts. So on the system that like Lisa will be using this in her regression class this year. I had used it in previous multivariate, but it's so onerous and clunky, and it's just something with 6 students. I don't think I can do it. But the best I can do is at least give you the grace of saying if you want to improve the grade, improve your grade. All right. Okay. Anything else you want to know tonight? Get out 15 minutes early. Does anybody feel cheated? Not at 7:30 at night.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a great.
Spend my own time. No, I'll make up that 15 minutes.
There you go. Well, have a great night. Thanks for joining me. I'm sorry that this is sort of repetitive with what you may have learned in R, but I wanted to establish a common foundation so we could all be there. And maybe next week, hopefully next week won't be as repetitive, but it's heavy into interactions and simple and conditional main effects.
To hear all over it.
So we are diving into how to go and splice up variables in 15 different ways. And it's multivariate because we have multiple variables moderating the impact of things on predictors. So
I'm going to do this and be like, I don't know this for my dissertation. I learned it too late.
but I mean, I think
You've had
interaction. You've seen a few interactions before
Oh,
though?
100%. Yes.
Okay, so it's that like
But none of my models in my mixed method. Mixed Let's have some. I'm just gonna.
okay, that's good. Thanks everybody. Good to see you online, and good to see you in person. See you next week.